Hi, Justin Vacula here. The following file you're about to listen to is a speech I gave to the Humanist Association of Greater Philadelphia on June 24th of 2012. The topic of my speech was reframing the discussion. Within the speech, I argued and gave reasons for why non-religious individuals should be civil in discussion with religious believers. I say that there can be many benefits to civil discussion. If people can reframe the discussion as being something that can admit of progress, lead one to critically examine their own beliefs, and much more, many benefits can be had. In the beginning of the speech, I offered condolences to Joe Fox, an atheist in the Pennsylvania community who will be deeply missed. Enjoy the speech.
And having me today. Before I get into the speech, I want to express condolences to family and friends of Joe Fox. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him. It would have been great to meet him today, but a lot of what I've read about him, he was very well liked in the community, and he's done a lot for the humanist community, so thanks for that. Today I want to talk about a topic I call reframing the discussion, and I want to talk about this rather than other topics like arguments for God's existence, arguments against, or whatever the case might be. I think that communication is a very important thing for humanists, secularists, etc. Because many times there are negative stereotypes that people have of us, that we're immoral people, we're bad, we want to destroy everything. I've heard the gamut, and I'm sure all of you have also. So I think when engaging with religious believers or whomever, it's important to have good conversational habits and approach a discussion with an intent to learn something about the other person. As humanists, it's very important to realize that there are humans who hold beliefs. It's not just the belief that you're disputing or interacting with. So the three things I want to talk about today are the benefits of reframing the discussion in a positive light, problems that can be had in discussion and how to address them, and false assumptions and objections to what I'm going to say. So, for critical thinking, I think a very important thing is stepping back from your own ideas, whether it be self-reflecting or whether it be objectively analyzing what we happen to believe. It might be impossible to fully step back because of all of our experiences, all of our biases. Philosopher Thomas Nagel talks about this in his book, The View from Nowhere, in that if we can have some kind of disinterested point of view and step back and see what we're like, we could benefit from this. And that's impossible because as humans we hold our beliefs and we come with experiences, so it's impossible to fully step back. So we can work on that and we can analyze what we believe and why. And I think we can really benefit from that. And when having the discussion with religious people of various backgrounds, it's often the case that there is little reflection of the beliefs, unfortunately. And it was one time Christopher Hitchens went on the Sean Hannity show and said, "You strike me as a man who never heard the arguments from the other side." And sometimes I feel like this when in discussions with religious believers of many sorts. Because from a Christian background and from Christian education, I don't think that they really looked at arguments when I hear things like Pascal's wager or, you're just going to go to hell so you should believe. It doesn't really seem that they looked into their beliefs too much. So when having a discussion with people, sometimes they'll be angry that the discussion would even take place or that one would object to what they would have to say. So one thing I try to do in discussions that seems to be helpful and positive is to say, well, let's learn from each other. Let's educate ourselves. If we can analyze what the both of us believe, we can learn something from this instead of just making assumptions about the other person and eventually even being hostile. Cold hard facts don't seem to be enough. If we're just going to throw arguments at people and just go with that, it doesn't seem that that's going to work. I don't see conversation as some kind of evangelical experience or deconversion attempt, but rather an interaction with people, so that if people can understand my viewpoint and I can understand theirs, it seems that there's a lot to gain from that. We can learn from each other, we can learn from other people. And it can often be the case that we can learn from religious people. We have a lot of blind spots, and by better understanding where others are coming from, we can more effectively engage those whom we disagree with, and hopefully learn something at the end of the day. So, by reframing the conversation as a positive learning experience, it seems that people will be more willing to talk to us instead of just having negative stereotypes and being hostile and angry. That we can learn from other people, it seems to benefit us. We understand what we believe and why, or at least better understand that. And other people can hopefully understand us. Again, with stereotypes as humanists being bad people or wanting to destroy everything, if we can present ourselves as just general human beings and say, here's what I believe and why. Here's why I disagree. Not in framing it, oh, I think you're wrong and you're stupid or anything like that. I've heard this a lot from fellow humanists and non-religious people, and I don't find it to be very productive. So another tactic, I think, for reframing the discussion is to talk about the progress that can be had with self-reflection. If we can think about our beliefs, we can better understand and present these ideas to other people. So by better understanding our beliefs and being able to dictate them and learn from other people, it seems that we can heavily benefit from this. We can be better able to defend beliefs and understand our positions if we can have a productive conversation with those whom we disagree with. Unfortunately, I hear from some people that they get angry at the discussion, and they get angry at other people for a disagreement, and I don't think this is a helpful thing to do. If instead of getting angry, if we could even control this, if we look at conversation as a positive learning experience, I think a lot can be had from that. Promoting open-mindedness is also something that can be very beneficial. This term seems to be a little bit slippery. Some people think of open-mindedness as accepting anyone's ideas for no good reason. Or I've heard, oh, you're not open-minded because you won't believe what I believe or you won't consider it. Well, saying in a conversation, hey, I'm willing to reconsider any and all of my beliefs given good reason. I'd like to hear what you have to say. And giving a person an opportunity to explain what they believe and why makes them feel more welcome to a conversation and makes it a less hostile environment. It's very important, I think, to have these conversations to decouple faith and morality. They often get put together. And many people say that with faith, you can only have this moral position, and if you don't have faith in whatever supernatural thing, then you can't be a good person. Well, I think by talking about this with people and explaining the finer points and saying, well, do you think I'm a bad person because I disagree with you? Most people will probably say no, but they haven't really analyzed this. Some people just haven't had conversations with humanists before, or non-religious people, and by actually interacting with people face-to-face and having a good, productive discussion, they can walk away happy, they can walk away enriched, better learned. So I think that's something that can be really good out of a conversation. We're often finding ourselves being put into corners where we only interact with people that we agree with. And with social networking, I fear that this can be even more of a thing, where we're only in our circles, we don't interact with other people, and I think that can be really destructive. In that case, people can have these stereotypes, and without interacting with others, it can be really damaging. The constant interaction with others keeps us honest, it keeps us informed. Sure.
Nobody wanted questions at the end.
Oh, that's okay. I'll keep it open.
A couple weeks ago, we had church here, church group, and we tried to share with them. And they kept on coming back to the Bible. It's in the Bible. And when I have discussions with people, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. How do you negate that?
Well, I think an interesting way to approach the discussion in that case is to say, well, we see that it's pretty clear that people have their morality before they come to the Bible. That you look at a page, you have your interpretation, and that's what you think is good. But I think a productive way is to ask the religious believer, well, do you think that I'm a moral person? And most people would say, well, I don't think you're bad because you disagree with me, or whatever is the case. Some religious people will even say that the moral law is written on your heart, so even if you're a non-religious person or non-theist or whatever might be the case, they'll say, well, you have morality, but you don't have a grounding for it, or it's all arbitrary, or whatever is the case. So I mean, it's a really difficult topic to approach sometimes because it takes some explaining. Compassion is a good place to start. I mean, I see that you're like me, so I want to treat you like a good person, and that's how we have a productive society.
Halfway in response to that, because what I was noticing at that same meeting, and this is totally tying into what you're saying, is I looked at it because the gentleman that was citing the Bible, his wife was speaking in different language. It's like there's male language, there's female language. The Bible is someone's language. It is their dialect. You know, like if you were speaking heavy Italian because you just came over on the boat, would I say, you lose your Italian? Well, you can't lose your Italian. That's who you are. That's how you speak. And once you understand it from that point of view, then you won't take it quite so personally.
Right. Yeah, that could be a good way of, well, I don't know so much about this book as you, so could you please explain it to me? Not just giving the verses, but why you're using these verses, why you think they're true, why you think they're good verses, perhaps. One verse from the Bible I really enjoy is from 1 Peter 3:15. It says, if anyone asks for the reason that's in your heart, prepare a defense and do so with gentleness and respect. So there is one Bible verse which promotes being civil and having reasons for your beliefs. So I sometimes throw that back at them.
Well, I agree with you. You don't have to. You don't have to believe in God to be good. And you look through the Bible. I was just at a women's secularism conference, and there was this Lorianne Geller who wrote a book. She went through all the. Her book talks about all the regressive quotations in the Bible, like Matthew 1:28-29, condemning homosexuality, Leviticus 18:20, saying homosexuals should be stoned and killed, or the Korean 4 saying if your wife is in trouble, spank her, kick her out of bed, and then spank her lightly. So, the Bible has a lot of progressive things in it, and all these Orthodox religious books. However, I find within many lower-income, especially in the black community, many blacks, or some blacks like that, the ones that accepted Christ tend to be better morally. So you have, like my father who started this chapter, had many experiences where he had properties in low-income neighborhoods, and the only way he could get decent people to run the place was by going to the local church. So sometimes, I guess, religion does have, even though it's superstition, it does have a positive effect for some people. And it shouldn't be, I guess, if it has a good effect, I guess religion that makes people act morally is good when it says my way or the highway.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely benefits that come from it. But what I'm most concerned is, are the reasons for believing the supernatural things justified? And if they're not, well, surely you can have all these good things by just having your book in your community or whatever might be the case. Bert Ehrman is one person who talks about what I believe he calls mythical faith. And this seems to be mythical faith, or something similar to that. And what that is, basically, is where people will not believe the supernatural stuff, but they'll take the book and derive from it what they want, what they will. And this seems to be a pattern in theology, or at least what I've experienced at King's College, which is the Catholic college I attended, where the theologians won't necessarily focus on the supernatural stuff, but they'll rather focus on the community building, the social justice aspect, and the good verses, as they say, that they pick out. So, I mean, my argument in many cases isn't so much with them. I wish they would just come out and say, hey, well, I don't believe in the supernatural stuff. They often don't do that, unfortunately. But, I mean, yeah, good things can be had from it.
Is Cancer Wilkes-Barre?
Yes.
Okay, I know where it is. It's at the end of that street, right?
Franklin, yeah.
Yeah. That street. It ends at the college, doesn't it? It's a real pretty street that ends at the college.
Yeah, and to go back to the Bible a little bit, there are so many themes today, and I see people in my age category where they don't necessarily take it literally, and they're going to just go with their own interpretation, and it's what might be called religious liberalism, where people pull what they want from the tradition, and it's a big hodgepodge of all sorts of different beliefs. In some circles, oh, nobody goes to hell, hell doesn't exist, everyone goes to heaven. So they're not so much taking from the Bible, it seems, that they're taking from what they think is moral in many cases. So it's interesting to kind of see it shift away from the literalistic belief and more toward this new liberal religion type belief. And then you also get what's called religious pluralism, the idea that there is one ultra God, some real being, but everyone's just looking at it in a different way. So the Muslims are looking through their lens of culture, and the Christians are looking through their lens, and everyone's right, they say. So you see that there's a shift away from the book, and it's more of one's own interpretation of what they think is justified, and not so much of an adherence to the book themselves. In discussions, I don't find going to the Bible too productive. I try to stay away from that. I come from a philosophical background, and I like arguments against gods, or just talking about origins of morality, or something like that. I find it more productive, because with the Bible, it doesn't seem like we're going to get anywhere in a discussion, because they keep backing up. Well, the Bible says it's true, so therefore it is, and everything. So I don't find that too productive. But just giving people the opportunity to talk and talk about their scripture, I guess that can be a good thing, because they recognize that you're actually listening to what they have to say. If you're just going to keep talking over them or not letting them talk, that doesn't seem to be too productive.
I found that when you do that, though, a lot of the average believer doesn't even know. They don't well, what does your book say about this? And they're like, well, what about in Matthew? Well, I know very little, but I can actually remember a few things. And they'll be like, what's that? I'm like, well, never mind. So, when you try to engage somebody and they know nothing, they've never cracked the Bible, they've never, what is the basis of, you're a Christian, what is the basis of Christianity? They can't even tell you what it means to be a Christian. A lot of people, this is from, personal experiences, anecdotal, that the basic tenets of Christianity, what had to happen to become a Christian, and a lot of people don't understand that that's how they're born, and a lot of people end up admitting, oh, that's what my parents are, that's what I am, I don't, whatever, I don't go to church, I don't. So when you try to engage, be respectful, a lot of times it's almost like, sometimes I've had people get angry when you're, trying to be respectful, because they think you're trying to trick them or trap them into showing they don't know what they're talking about, or that you're going to trip them up on, Noah's Ark or Jonah and the whale or something. Adam and Eve that haven't had a belly button.
Yeah, many times people view disagreement as disrespect, no matter what the topic is, because people find their beliefs so personal, they equate belief with who they are. So if you disagree with them, they think, oh, you think I'm stupid, you think I'm wrong, you're being rude, and even so much of, you shouldn't even challenge beliefs. People view it as a disrespectful thing to do. And interestingly enough, there's this whole shift of diversity in schools, where we want to be inclusive of people and have more positions represented. And strangely enough, it's often not diversity of ideas. And one time I went to a program at a mosque, and there was preaching that went on for about 45 minutes about how non-Muslims should burn in hell. And Allah wills that to happen. And there was a question and answer session. And the man said, ask us any question, ask us any question. And I raised my hand and I said, do you think it's moral for non-Muslims to go to hell? And the man refused to answer the question. He said, well, it's not up to me. It's what the Quran says. It's what Allah wills. It's not my decision. And some of the students who went with me got angry at me. They said, I shouldn't have asked that question. It was very disrespectful for me to do that. And I said, well, why do you think that's disrespectful? He's talking about hellfire and how I'm going to burn eternity, but it's disrespectful for me to ask a question about that when he asked me to. I find that really strange. So people want to make this shift of ideas to be immune from criticism. It's really bizarre. So I say to these people, as I've said earlier, well, don't you think we can learn something from discussing these ideas? Don't you think we can make progress? Don't you think we can move closer to the truth? And what you mentioned earlier was that these people have these beliefs, but they don't have the reasoning. So it seems that the belief came before the reasoning. The reasoning came after the beliefs, right? I mean, when I hear some Christian philosophers, they talk about stuff like the transcendental argument and the ontological argument, and I doubt that they had this first and then they had the belief. It's really a strange thing. So there are all sorts of reasons that people have, whether it be personal experience, prayer, reflection, utility arguments of, oh, it makes me a good person, it does a lot of good for the community, or whatever. So, I mean, they can talk about how it makes me a good person. And I say, well, can't I be a good person without these beliefs? Surely I can have a moral framework, and they agree. So I think by engaging these people and having the respectful discussion, by explaining your point of view, that there can be a lot of good that can be had in that, instead of being hostile, instead of being disrespectful of people, it seems to be very important to separate beliefs from persons. Have any other questions?
Have you ever heard of the term evangelical secularist? It seems that we have a lot of people. I didn't go to the Washington thing, but I understand there was some really calories down there. It looked like a rock concert, a bunch of filthy language. And we're supposed to be the good guys, you know?
Right.
Set an example, you know? And it seems that a lot of people lose their religion, and it's almost, they act almost the way they did when they get saved the first time. They go completely overboard, you know? There's no reformer like a former. And it really bugs the hell out of me sometimes, like the big signs that they were putting, you know, the billboards around, you know, especially that one that showed the black men in chains.
Oh, the Year of the Bible billboard, yeah.
And you know, I mean, that's a turn off, things like that. And I don't want to lose. I hate to see that.
Well, what I did for advertising, as was mentioned in the introduction, there was this talk of billboards being offensive, and I was wondering, well, what is it that people are so angry about? Is it the word atheist? So people were saying, why don't we have a billboard that says, like, puppies are cute, brought to you by the Atheist Association, or whatever. And I said, well, you know, forget it. I want to go even deeper into that. So I proposed a bus ad in Lackawanna County, Scranton, Pennsylvania, blank background, simply had the word atheist on it. And the bus ad was denied. We were told that it was too controversial. It was an attack on religion. It was offensive. It would start a debate about public issues. And it seems in this case that our existence is offensive to people. And it's really sad. And you were saying there are these people who are really, you said like evangelical is the term you use. Well, some people say, well, they'll never change their minds, so why should we bother to be respectful? And I think that's a really bad way to take it, because many of us were formerly religious, and many of us have changed our minds. And it's not necessarily that it's, oh, we meet you one time and you deconvert. It's not like that at all. I think just approaching people and being respectful is the way to go. And I think it's important to challenge ideas and be very critical of ideas, while at the same time still being respectful of the person.
I do agree with, when I was at the Reason Rally, I was there with Stella, and she was really upset by, like, Tim mentioned. And to me, I don't care. So he's got potty mouth. But I did agree that it's a family thing. There's kids there, and, you know, MF this, MF that, you know, isn't really, you know, I wouldn't have wanted my 3 or 4-year-old to be there, but it's not going to kill them. But one of the things you mentioned, evangelical, and I hear that, like, for Richard Dawkins and stuff, and it's misplaced, because I have a problem with it, because it means that they believe that Jesus died for our sins and resurrected, and they're an atheist. Evangelical means that. So it's a term that comes from the religious to bring us down, and some of the non-believers carry that forward and say that major atheists are believers in Christ. They're evangelicals. They believe, you know, the whole thing, the born again stuff. So it's a misplaced term. It's an insult to atheists, and non-believers end up using it too. But they're enthusiastic. They feel, a lot of the non-believer community feel that it's the religious community is dangerous, because some on the extreme want us to disappear. They want us to die. They want us to leave whatever country we're from. They want to kill us, and we're going to burn in hell anyway. So what the hell? So they could be dangerous, and that's what a lot of these very motivated free thought people, atheists, non-believers are like, because they feel that if we sit back and take it, and it's happened in the past where people get killed because they're infidels. that's why they're enthusiastic. I see it. You know, so let's stand up for our rights. I agree. I think the potty mouth stuff is a little ridiculous, but maybe in a nightclub.
I mean, I'm very enthusiastic. I'm out there. I look at this as, you know, my motivations are, I see it as a hobby in many cases. It's fun and interesting writing about the issues, meeting people. The community building is nice. And I hear a lot from people, well, I thought I was the only one. You know, I thought I was the only non-believer. I wasn't aware there were people out there who believed like me. So by being out there and being open, being honest with people, while at the same time being respectful, I think is a good way to go. I mean, sure, there could be a place for satire and comedy and everything like that, but I think it has to be good in context. So if we're just going to go around saying, oh, religious people are stupid and you're an idiot for believing that, I don't find that to be productive at all. So I'm not.
That's just insulting.
I mean, myself, just probably like a lot of people here, I watch a lot of things on YouTube and things like that. And I read a lot of the discussion that goes on between, you know, from fundamentalist believers and believers in God and atheists. And a lot of the discussion that you see is really not, it's really not polite in any regard. I mean, I'm all for freedom of speech and I'm all for people saying whatever they feel. But the whole point is, I think what we're seeing more on this, almost like counteroffensive to the religious people on the internet. Even the way I see when people are removed and they're not looking at people face to face or having a discussion. They can type all this horrible stuff. And what we're seeing, kind of, I think, with those types of people is like passive aggressive militant atheism rather than humanism, which really, like you say, tries to start a discussion or maintain a discussion rather than just say, fuck you, end the discussion. That's a lot of what I see when I look at the atheist boards and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, recently I had a podcast episode with Portland professor of philosophy Peter Boghossian. He's from Oregon. And one thing we talked about was that we have to display the behavior we want to see in other people. So if we want to expect other people to treat us well, we should do the same. And it doesn't mean, totally putting your hands behind your back and just saying nothing and not challenging people. I think it's possible to challenge people while still being respectful of the people, right? We can be very critical of the ideas and say, well, here's why I disagree. Here's why I don't believe this, etc. We can do that, but we don't need the attacking language of people. We want to attack ideas and not people, I think, is a good way to go.
That's where I was going. It seems like more direct attacks on people's, credibility and people's intelligence rather than their ideas.
And I mean, when I was a Christian, really quick, I wasn't challenged until I was around the age of 16. And when people first disagreed with me, I viewed it and I was thinking, well, it must be the devil, going in them, and this is just, this whole thing. And that's how I was raised to think that. The questioning is a bad thing and everything. And I think some religious people are in this camp where it's a bad thing for them to question. So I think by saying in conversations, well, hey, it's good, we want to get closer to the truth, we want to understand our beliefs, we want to understand others. And when we can understand people, we can be more respectful of others rather than, like I said, putting ourselves into corners and just attacking people. Shoot first.
Last August, I moved into a 2,200 resident independent living place called Anne's Choice. I don't think they heard the word atheist from any of their members until last Christmas when I put the reason tree, the tree of knowledge, up, and got attacked for that. But I keep on talking to people, and I'm an atheist, and I let it not be known that this is what I am. And I think people are coming around. They accept me. If I'm in a new group and something happens, and I kind of say, well, I'm an atheist. Oh, yeah, you're the one.
I think it's really important to be out if you can. A lot of people say, well, I can't afford to because I'll get kicked out of my house or financial difficulties. In many cases, that's true. But it might be a little bit over-exaggerated in some cases, but I would like for people to be out and representing and just even if people know you're an atheist and you're not necessarily talking about religion, but just being a good person, just being, it's important to do that.
I was thinking the other day of this analogy. A good guard dog is watchful. It's not barking all the time. It only does its thing when the necessity requires it. As opposed to a Jack Russell Terrier, which is a pain in the butt, which is constantly nipping at you now. Are you going to walk up to the nice, calm dog and pet it and connect with it? Or are you going to walk up to the Jack Russell Terrier and say, take my ankle, please? Really?
Yeah,
that's the difference in demeanor.
Yeah, it's hard for them to even go in the conversation to begin with, because they view it, like I said, as an attack, as a bad thing, questioning is a bad thing. So by being extremely aggressive and attacking people doesn't seem to be the way to get people into the discussion. It's very hard to do so to begin with. I mean, what I do is some people might be uncomfortable having the discussion face to face, and I say, well, okay, you can read my website. You can go on the internet and see what other people have to say, because it could be very intimidating.
Polls show that the least likely person to be elected to an office, especially a high office, the president, would be, I'm sorry,
what was your name?
I said polls, just in general.
Pew polls.
Yeah. Show that people, when they respond to these polls, they say the one person that they wouldn't vote for would be an atheist, and they would be more likely to vote for, say, a Mormon than they would an atheist. And I know this has been going on for many, many years, because I remember Teddy Roosevelt, when he talked about Thomas Paine, said he was a dirty little atheist. And but here's my point. There must be some kind of fear behind that attitude. But then developing at the same time is another attitude that kind of is in counterpoint to the first, and it's this. My granddaughter complained that she's a student at Temple University in Philadelphia, and she complained that teachers badmouth evangelical Christians, and they say all kinds. I don't know what they say, and I didn't ask her specifically because she was saying a lot, and I didn't want to interrupt her. But I get this feeling that they have sort of taken up a counter measure and said, well, people are against us and people don't want us to speak out and people are depriving us of our religion and so on. Whereas in truth, it's the atheists who have always been under suspicion. And I wonder do you ever have occasion to deal with that issue?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm active in church-state issues, and people will say things like, in 2009, for example, as mentioned, I filed a complaint against a holiday display at a courthouse. There was a nativity that was on a street corner with 2 floodlights on it. Way off to the side was a menorah, and then there was a snowman behind the tree. And I objected to this, and people were saying, oh, you're just trying to take our religion away and make it illegal for us, and this and that. And I said, well, no, it's not about that. It's about being inclusive, in that the government shouldn't be promoting one religion. There should be an inclusive display where everyone can chime in, or we can have secular decorations in addition to the holiday. So it's really overblown, because I think in many cases they're used to it, and they think that, oh, this is a Christian nation, or whatever might be the case. So they've been breaking the rules for a while, perhaps, and just having these crosses on government land. We hear all these stories all the time, and they say, well, oh, it's you atheists, you're trying to take away religion. And I say, well, no, it's not about that. It's about having government being neutral, because that benefits everyone. And when I frame discussions about separation of church and state, I frame it as something everyone should be concerned about. What happened if your religion suddenly came into the minority? What happens if one sect of religion takes over? We have the Pat Robertson version of Christianity as opposed to Barack Obama also, or whatever might be the case.
But haven't we, in many ways, it's true that people, survey showed that 40% of the people say they wouldn't vote for an atheist and so on. But of course, before Barack Obama won, 40-45% said they wouldn't vote for a black man. He must have gotten a lot of their votes to get elected. He did get 55%. Haven't we won in many ways? For instance, take homosexuality. It's condemned in the Quran, it's condemned in the Torah, it's condemned in the Bible. Yet now a majority say they'll
there's a lot of progress in what people talk about as the atheist movement, or better yet, the secular visibility movement, is that more people are getting out there, and these discussions are being had, and people are being exposed to ideas, because previously people were very afraid to come out because there can often be severe consequences. But now people, because more are coming out, and because more are coming to this realization, it might be because of the political game or 9/11 or whatever might be the case, more people are willing to come out and take a stand, and I think that's a lot of progress.
What about the clergy project? How about that?
Right.
Talking about coming out.
I think, and I think it's important to realize too for most people that while atheists and non-religious people are pretty underrepresented, to say the least, in America, in Europe, and it's not that way. It's almost half and half, and it's. I think America might be moving into that more. I mean, I think they said that the non-religious, group of Americans is growing faster than any religious type of movement or any. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. That things are definitely getting better for the non-religious and the secularists.
And even more conventions are popping up everywhere, where people are willing to attend and travel. We have the Reason Rally, that was a big thing. Now there are competing conventions. I mean, there's all this talk about...
Convention? Is that the word you're using?
Conventions, yes. Conferences.
Okay, of...
Secular groups.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. There are events like...
Clarify.
There was the Center for Inquiry. They had their conference this weekend. And we have the Humanist Association recently had their conference. And there are several popping up. And there's possibly even going to be one coming to Pennsylvania, which I'm very excited to be a part of.
Where?
And possibly the Harrisburg area.
Do you think that the coming out or the expression that atheists are making publicly is offensively or defensive? In other words, we're not trying. We're not So is this a defensive, like, we're bad people, so therefore you're attacking us and now we're defending ourselves? Or is there a movement to convert people to humanism, or to atheism, I should say?
Well, there's a lot going on, because many people who realize they're non-believers or become humanists or whatever might be the case, they, in some cases, see, well, hey, here's all this harm that this belief is causing, or here's what's going on as a result of religious belief, or whatever might be the case, so people feel a need to speak up against that. Perhaps there's a social justice thing involved. I mean, when I first got into the movement, I read Harris, Hitchens, Dawkins, etc., and a lot of their arguments were the harm of religion, and that's what got me speaking. When I heard about the crisis of AIDS in Africa and how the Pope is not managing it, there are a lot of problems out there. I mean, there can be one way to talk about the harm of religion. There's a recent book by Sean Fairclough called Attack of the Theocrats. And I had...
So angry.
Yeah, that's what happens. And, I mean, Greta Christina recently came out with her book saying, why are you atheists so angry? And there are a lot of reasons that people have for speaking up, whether it's the social justice aspect, whether it's, oh, I was religious in my upbringing and I realized it was false and now I feel kind of betrayed, so I want to speak out against it. And whether it be just a hobby, a fun thing to do. So there is an offensive and a defensive component. But one thing I mentioned earlier is I don't see conversations as this evangelical moment. I don't think I can change someone's mind overnight. But what I can do is explain my position so they can better understand it, and perhaps they'll consider it. I don't think that I necessarily totally make people change their minds. I might have been a catalyst for that, but it's their decision. It's on them. I mean, you're not forced to deconvert just because you read me or read my website. It's often a long process.
There's a book, and it's called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And our granddaughter asked me to read that. And I have it at home, and I looked through it just to kind of get a general scope of what it was. And it's filled with all kinds of arguments against evolution. And I mean, if you took the transcripts from the Dover trial, you could just counteract what's said in that book. But I was thinking, do you have any suggestions for a general approach for that? Because, frankly, I don't want to read that whole book because I know what's in it. I've gone through it chapter by chapter. So I can't truthfully say to her, yes, I read this book, because I'm not going to read it. I don't have enough time, and it's a big, thick book because it's jam-packed full of biblical quotations, etc. So what's your take on that type?
Yes, this is an interesting one. I mentioned I do a podcast, and we had a whole episode on religious faith, or faith in a religious context. And people throw around the word faith as a synonym for hope, trust. But the faith that religious people have is very different than what might be called faith that we have in science or the government, or that I cross the street and I'm not going to get shot, or whatever might be the case. When it comes to being a non-theist, I lack belief in supernatural things because I don't find good reasons. That's not faith. I don't find the arguments compelling, so I don't believe. Surely one doesn't have faith being an Santa Clausist or whatever might be the case. So what I tell people, they ask me, oh, why are you an atheist? Why are you doing this, whatever? I'll say, well, I don't find the arguments to be convincing, so I don't believe. Some people might even say, well, you don't believe in the Greek pantheon or the Norse pantheon or whatever. You don't have faith because you don't believe. So Peter Boghossian, as I mentioned earlier, the philosophy professor from Portland, Oregon, he says that we should treat faith like some people treat swearing, and throw a quarter in a jar every time we use the word in improper context. To decouple faith from hope and morality is another thing that often comes up too. It doesn't seem to be a good process to arrive at the truth. It's simply saying, well, I believe something totally regardless of the evidence or the reasons. Or some people use it as a leap of faith. It's a tricky subject, so I think it's important to say, what do you mean by that you have faith? They surely don't have hope that Jesus exists or that Jesus walks on water. They're making a knowledge claim. So if they start giving reasons, well, then it's not so much faith anymore, right? They're trying to...
I've started to use the word conviction anymore. I don't say I believe. There's a difference between belief and conviction. I'll say I have the conviction that, rather than say I believe that, because now the word believe has started to take on the connotation
it has like
of
street
faith.
language as like you have the belief. But when I use the term belief, it's a proposition I hold to be true. right? And philosophy talks a lot about what's called a justified true belief, as well, we can explain we have good reasons for believing something, and it could possibly be a knowledge claim, but there's a distinction, and that could be a very long discussion. Question in the back?
Sim Harris brings up a really good question that I keep thinking about, and it kind of has to do with like what's going on in the Middle East right now, and in other parts of the world where fundamentalism is kind of taking over. And his question has to do with how can you give somebody or share with somebody a rational argument or a logical argument? How can you give that to someone who doesn't value logic or reason? Like, how can you possibly have a discourse with fundamentalists who, even if you can demonstrate that they were wrong, their logic gets tossed out the window in the name of how do you deal with something?
Yes, this is one problem, and it's a note I had at the bottom. It's where people say that belief is not based on reason, and it seems to be a non-conversation that can happen, but if you can frame the discussion as being a learning experience and as reflection, and there is a truth out there that we can go toward or perhaps come close to, and if you have agreement on that, then you can have a discussion. And with a lot of the academic theists, as I mentioned before, the theologians, they'll agree on basic philosophy that, okay, there is a truth and we can reach it, but some people will say, oh, it's all just a matter of opinion, and there is no truth, and it's a real problem. They have what's called truth relativism, that it varies from person to person, and it doesn't seem like there can be a conversation there with those people. So you have to kind of have a pre-conversation about epistemology before you get into questions of metaphysics or anything else.
So what do you do when there's such a parting of the ways?
Okay, so what I'll say is, well, why do you believe? What are your reasons? And if they appeal to faith, then, well, why is faith means to reach the truth? Why is that a reason to believe? So perhaps taking a Socratic method and asking them questions to kind of get at what they believe, and then ask the questions there, I think is a productive way to go. But if they keep going faith, then, I mean, you're not going to get anywhere. And you talked about that book, I Don't Have the Faith to Be an Atheist or whatever, and I recently got a DVD in the mail from a creationist whom I met. And the one example in the DVD is, well, imagine there's this big circle, and some of you might have seen this YouTube video, and this is all the knowledge in the world, and by you being an atheist, you're saying that you know that God can't be in this. Could you know 50% of what's in the world? What if God's in the other 50%? And they'll try that, but that's them misunderstanding what it means to be a non-theist. I think a productive way to go about it is saying, I don't find the reasons to be compelling, so I don't believe.
Well, how do you insert the source of morality when they say it's in the book? And it's not in my book, so I just try to be moral.
Right, so what I usually go at that point is saying, well, I realize that other people are like me, they have similar wants, needs, and desires. You realize that about me. So you want to be treated respectfully, I want to be treated respectfully, I want X, Y, and Z, and so do you. So that's why I want to be a moral person. I want to be compassionate toward other people. I want to see a flourishing society. I want to see people have good lives. I don't want to go around, raping, murdering, and pillaging. I don't value that. We have to start with a value judgment that perhaps life is a good thing. Perhaps we want to see people flourishing. I mean, there can be so many ways to go at it. But the question sometimes I would ask these religious people would be, if you suddenly came about a reason for not believing in any gods or whatever might be the case, would you suddenly start killing people? And many people would say, no, I wouldn't do that. Well, clearly there's something else going on.
I travel around the country quite a bit. I drive, just take off just for the hell of it, just drive around. And everywhere I go, I see these monstrous mega churches. Now, and it becomes very discouraging. How do you fight something like this? Some of these places have 90-piece orchestras.
Right.
And, it's a show for nothing. Well, nothing. You just contribute for 10% or whatever. And, it really gets discouraging because these things might start out as a little storefront, and people go, they like the message of the preacher, they throw the money at him, and they always have a building fund going. Hell, they could have a place half as big as Willow Grove, and they've got a even a bigger building front.
In the parking lot.
And these people, I don't think they necessarily dwell on every word the preacher says, but it's like a trance thing. You see him doing the wave, and the 90-piece orchestra is playing, and how the hell are you going to fight something like that? Because the older I get, I see things like this, and we're paying for it because it's all tax-free.
Right.
I can't see that.
It
seems
really difficult at times, right? It seems that, well, there's all this out there, and these people are believing this way, and it's really hard to even get at them, or whatever might be the case. But as we mentioned, we've seen progress, right? There are more people coming out as non-religious. There are more people identifying as non-religious. Whatever the case might be, it's a much different climate now than it was 10 years ago. So I think that's...
more people in the world, too.
Yeah, that's true. But this is all percentile based, anyway. But, I mean, we're not going to necessarily reach out to everyone. I mean, it could be like people like the Westboro Baptist Church, for example. I mean, they're not going to deconvert tomorrow or because of a discussion that was had or whatever might be the case. But even there, people have left the church. We have Nate Phelps, for example, who's now an atheist and LGBT rights supporter.
Yeah, about their mega churches, they pretty much, a lot of them, or most of them, have stripped away all the iconography of Christianity. A lot of them don't even have a cross. And they have all the, like you said, they have the rock orchestras and the video screens. And they're more like a positive thinking cult. The problem for them is that it's usually not a personality cult, but when the leader that makes it a big 30,000 people a week showing up, something happens, he dies or goes to jail, the whole thing collapses. And so they're almost like they're pop culture things that are very ephemeral. They're growing because people don't want to go to church on Sunday and be told you're damned, you're going to fire and brimstone and stuff. These are positive thinking cults, almost, where they're just told, whatever you want, you can have.
As long as you get 10% of
well, you have to tithe.
That's why
Yeah, it's a big feel-good thing,
They're
right?
positive thinking. It's pop psychology stuff that they one pin in the balloon, they disappear. Ted Haggard, some of these big churches disappear when the founder died or went to jail, so yeah, they're worrisome, but they're also very fragile.
Right, there's about 4 places to take that one. If you look around, they're all over the place now.
Well, when you ask the question, there's a gospel and somewhere around here. When you ask the question what Bob said, I'm thinking they are an entertainment venue.
Sure, that's all.
And when you see their store and all the crap they're selling, it's an entertainment
And
venue.
the economy is bad.
It's like going to a big mega concert, and I think I've known people that actually go to some of the local ones who actually get inside their heads for their real beliefs. Their real beliefs disagree with something that's being said up there. But like Bob said, once again, entertainment. If you got a TV show that's, built around a name, and that name goes away, what have you got? Unless another name can move up really good and prove.
And the praise-a-thon. You ever see the praise-a-thon?
I've also watched a lot of Pat Robertson's fundraising.
All over the world.
Yeah, but it's a big feel-good thing, right? It's people, they go in and they hear what they want to hear and put their money in the basket and they walk away. And when people say, well, what is the benefit then of being a humanist or a non-theist? I say, well, I value truth. I value being honest with myself and others, looking into the issues. And I want to believe that which is justified, which I can defend. But when it comes to the supernatural beliefs, I don't find good reasons. And it seems to be liberating to say, here, I'm going to have this open mind and this willingness to change my ideas if new evidence and arguments come forth. And by being a non-theist and being open about it, I find that to be very rewarding. The religious say, well, why would you get up in the morning if you don't believe? And I say, well, surely you have reasons to get up in the morning other than God's. I mean, don't you have children? And maybe they get you up in the morning? There's a lot going on. So they try to put all this religious thing into a box. And they'll say, well, you can't have meaning, you can't have morality. I'll say, well, sure I can. I can give an accounting for it. And the question is, well, what's so special about your belief that gives you that? I can't have that for some reason. And they seem to get stumped.
Do you have any stories where you've talked to people using the techniques you're discussing and having success, where you've had somebody soften and say, well, I only had that happen to me once in my life, so that's why I wondered if you've had more experiences that way?
It's kind of hard because you don't necessarily hear all the feedback from the people, and you never know who you really impacts. I mean, one thing I talked about was in a podcast episode was just music and movies and everything. A band I really enjoy listening to is a symphonic metal band from the Netherlands called Epica, and they have a lot of themes of philosophy and religion in their songs, and that music was very influential. In lyrics, they have themes that are anti-religious, so to say, or talking about the dangers of organized religion, and I quote their lyrics quite often, so you never really know who you can reach out to and in what medium, and maybe that one interaction you had with a religious person could be the beacon that leads them to possibly reconsider their ideas, or kind of, I guess, mellow, if you will. But at King's College, I tried to start a secular student alliance group on campus, and initially there were students who actually screamed in my face and said, you should leave this college, you shouldn't be here, blah, blah, blah. And one of my coworkers at the time was like that initially. But after some time, after sitting down with me and talking with me, we're friends today. And I chat with her on the phone. And it seems that being respectful and being willing to have a discussion was really a good thing. If I were to yell at her and be angry, it doesn't seem like there would have been much progress there.
I was brought up a Christian. I was forced to go to church until I was about 16, until I was confirmed. And the point that was brought up before is that a lot of religious people are never exposed. Like you brought up Sean Hanley. And a lot of people who have been indoctrinated with those beliefs, or who have been around people, a group of people who all share those similar beliefs, you never really get challenged. And it wasn't until I was like 18 that I was on a spring break with a close friend of mine, and I said to him, I don't know how anybody could believe that, all this is here for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And he goes, because it is. And I said, excuse me? And it was not an idea that I had ever taken seriously before. And maybe that's not true. But still, it was a counterpoint to everything that I thought I knew or believed about the world. And it was honestly, it was having somebody just challenge the argument in just a little bit of way, and also being free from the religious institution and being able to have those kind of conversations. But just a one-time conversation I had with my friend at a diner really completely changed what I was thinking about everything. So
Yeah, that can happen. I mean, it's not necessarily that he was trying to deconvert you or whatever. It was just, I guess, planting a seed, and it was you reflecting on the issues, and you're here today. So, something as simple as that. I mean, even in my undergraduate studies, I had a philosophy course called Ethics in the Good Life, and the paper topic I had at the end of the year and what was discussed in class was the meaning of life. And the question was, well, can you have meaning in life without belief in a God? And I had to write a paper about that while I was still a believer. And I came to the conclusion that, well, you don't need supernatural beliefs to have meaning in your life. And that really set the ball rolling from there, along with other discussions I had. And being at King's College, which is quite a liberal Catholic institution, I was able to have the discussions with the professors, with the other students, and once I said, hey, I'm concerned about if my beliefs are true, that's where it all went from there. And it's nice, it's liberating.
Well, that word supernatural, when I use that word with my son-in-law is an evangelical Christian, and I said, well, the only difference between us is that you do hold, you have supernatural convictions, and I don't. And then he was tempted. He started to say no, and then he said, well, I guess that's right. My belief in God is a supernatural belief. But that's okay. But he started to think about it. This was Bob. And so he started to explore, and I let it go. I didn't pursue the conversation because I figured, well, I'm advanced an inch. So maybe I'll quit while I'm ahead and let him think about that.
Yeah, that's what it takes. I mean, even you asked, have you had any success or what have you heard from people? But one thing I really enjoy is religious believers who come up to me and say, hey, I disagree with you on some issues, but on these I agree. And, with all the hostility from the community at some points and from people, it's nice to have people going up to you and say, hey, I actually read what you have to say, and, I like you, and I can respect you as a person, even though we disagree on these issues. And I think that's wonderful progress. And if I were to take this very confrontational approach of attacking people, I don't think that would be the case.
Have you had any threats?
Oh, yes, I've had a lot. When I challenged the nativity scene, I got a lot of threats from people, from fellow college students who say things like, I hope you get shot, come up to my room and I'll F you up, and all this other nonsense. And there were students who were sending me messages like this, and I reported them to the school, and I stayed at the school during one of the holiday breaks, and they upped security, so everything was fine. So it was behind 3 doors, and it wasn't much of an issue. But it was kind of scary at first, and it was really unfortunate, but the community outrage was just ridiculous. On my website, you can see the hate mail. I have it all archived, and it's really calmed down since 2009, and the bus ad issue didn't get much hate, thankfully. But one thing that was interesting is I went on a local radio show, and the show host, Jumpin' Jeff Walker from KRZ, called me the 3rd most hated person in Luzerne County for challenging the nativity display. And that's our getting. So 1 and 2, you've probably heard of what was called the Kids for Cash scandal, in which judges from Luzerne County basically put kids in a juvenile detention center for kickbacks and sold them to slavery.
And that courthouse is right on your campus.
That's right. And that's where the nativity scene was too.
Yep.
And so I was right up there with Chivarell and Conahan, the 2 judges that sold kids into slavery. So this is the perception that the community had. And there were people writing in these nasty letters to the newspaper, and I got some physical hate mail. One said, Muhammad and Beelzebub are really proud of you, and you should be expelled, and, I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas, and all this other stuff. But when people actually read my side of the story, like I said, some Christians will say, like, hey, I agree with you on this, now I understand. But at first, I just had this different impression of you. And it's easy for people to do that, to not do the research and to just write people off and run away and be done with it. But having the conversations and being genuine with people, I think is a really beneficial thing.
I do think it's kind of funny. It's like the parable in the Bible where the guy has like 100 sheep, and one guy has 1, and the guy can't deal with the guy having 1 sheep, so he goes and steals the other guy's sheep and kills it. It's like, here you are at King's College, which is an exclusively Catholic Christian university mostly, and here you are trying to start, a small secular student alliance and getting, essentially getting, threats on your person for doing that, even though they have this whole.
Oh yeah.
This whole.
Yeah, it's really funny to think of it that way.
That's mind blowing.
Just to start a student group, and I tried to do it at Marywood too, and I got refused there, unfortunately. That's where I'm attending now. And I've had some experiences before. There was a school voucher rally that was in Harrisburg, and this was Senate Bill 1, and the idea was that taxpayer money could go to private schools, and parents get vouchers and they can send their kids to religious schools. And there are a lot of problems with this, starting that schools could discriminate against children, they won't accept children are forced to pray, and it's this big issue. So I went there and protested the rally with American Atheists, and I had my sign that said, keep church and state separate. And there was this whole place. If you've ever been in the Capitol building, you know that there are several floors. And they bust in students from all across Pennsylvania during school time. And they're all holding up all these, like, Senate Bill 1, school choice, and the whole rotunda is filled with people. And here I am with one other person on one side, and people couldn't take that. And there were these women who went in front of me and were going like this and getting in front of my sign. And I said to her, really, you have this whole Capitol building of people supporting your position. You can't even take this. And the one person who was speaking, his name was Senator Anthony Williams from the Philly area. And he started going on this rant against me. He was pointing at me and he said, you could send your children to atheist schools. And this is our rally, not yours. It was a mess, and he put it up on YouTube, so it's wonderful. And, you have this whole rally, and that's, what I see is, I'm just this guy on the internet, I'm doing things in my community, you don't have to listen to what I say, but if it's so threatening that I have this position, that you have to be so angry and attack me over it, that really says a lot about you. It shows that you're insecure, and then it's, why can't you just have the conversation and learn something? You can download the podcast, you have no pressure whatsoever. You can turn it off if you don't like it, and you can listen on your own time and everything. You could write me a message, whatever, you don't have to. You could read my website. There's no pressure, but people feel so attacked by it because they have their beliefs with them, and they think this is what kind of person I am, and they view it as disrespectful to have the conversation. And I think we need to change that and say, well, let's have the discussion and let's be respectful, and we can have this conversation. What's so hard about discussing ideas, right? So if we can have people more open to the discussion, I think we can greatly benefit from that. Thanks.